Hey, everybody. How's it going? Good. I'm Andrew. I'm Steve Madsen's son. Just imagine what that's like. Some of you are thinking, that must be so wonderful. And then others of you are thinking, that sounds really weird. And you'd both be right. You'd both be right. My brothers and I are founding members of this overgrown living room Bible study. This is us here. Tyler is a little lammy, and there's me as an angel, and my brother Kevin is a shepherd there. My job that night, I had one job, and it was to announce Jesus' birth to the shepherds. I stepped out into the hallway and into the living room to announce Jesus' birth to the shepherds, and with all the people there and the video cameras out and everything, I completely blanked, and I totally lost my lines. I had no idea what I was doing. So thankfully, the shepherds, they did eventually locate Jesus, but no thanks to me. So, but I'm hoping to not have a repeat of that with you tonight. Again, I'm Steve's son, but I'm different from him. I hope that's okay. We're going to get into the story of Jacob today. So, once upon a time, in the Middle East, there lived a very dysfunctional family. There was a dad, and there was a mom, and they had their two twin boys. And the trouble started even before the boys were born. Developing inside of their mom, these boys would pound on each other and just punch and kick and wrestle and choke slam and pile drive. And mom felt it all, every bit of it. And it got so bad that she prayed to God. She said, God, what's happening inside of me? And God answered her. And he said, well, inside of you are two rivals. And this struggle that you feel happening inside of you, it's just the beginning. And mom said, oh, thank you, I guess. Yeah, thanks for that. So mom gave birth to these two twin boys. And they're twins, but these two boys couldn't be more different from each other. Her son, Esau, he grew up to be really skilled with a bow and arrow. And her son, Jacob, grew up to be talented with a rolling pin and a spatula. He's good in the kitchen. And Esau, he's a man's man. Jacob, he's a mama's boy. Dad's name is Isaac, and Isaac loves his boy Esau. Mom's name is Rebecca, and she loves her little Jakey. And it really wasn't a family secret. I mean, they just played favorites. Isaac made it really clear that Esau was his number one son. Esau, if you picture, he's an outdoorsy kind of guy. He's Duck Dynasty material. Duck Commander. Dad really liked his son, Duck Commander. But think about growing up with a brother like Duck Commander. It's not easy to be the twin brother of the Duck Commander when you're more like the cake boss. Don't get me wrong, nobody would deny that you make amazing pastries. They're really, really good. But Dad, he just always looks at you with that face that's just like, that boy ain't right. Sorry. So our summer series, it's about those who experienced God's favor. And we're going to get to that in Jacob's story, but first, his story begins with favoritism. So favor and then favoritism, and there's a huge difference between the two. And some of us already, we resonate with Jacob's story. Some of us know what it feels like to be a Jacob, to know without any doubt, I'm not Dad's favorite. I'm the firstborn in my family, so I know I'm my dad's favorite. But when I look at Kevin, I just think like, man, that must be really hard for you. Sorry, dude. All right. But seriously though, some of us have experienced the backhand of favoritism, and it's not pretty. It's like, can you not be in this family photo? I'm gonna take a picture with my real family, and then we'll get another one with you the second time around. Whether it's actually been said out loud or not, the message we've received is, I'm not good enough. There's some way in which I'm deficient. There's something wrong with me. And everything in us is driven to change that, to prove ourselves so that we can experience Dad's favor, so we can know the love and acceptance and approval that all the other kids get. Sometimes it's not with our dad. Maybe he's not even part of the picture. But sometimes it's with like a father figure. It could be an uncle, it could be a stepdad, it could be a boss. But we're driven to hear this person say, "That's my boy. That's my girl. Oh, I'm just so proud of you. I love you. I'm so glad you're my kid." So this is the desire that drives Jacob. Everything that he does, everything that he says is in pursuit of this favor that he wants, but he doesn't have. And there's another way that the odds were stacked against Jacob. For one thing, his name. His name was Jacob. And for another thing, he wasn't the firstborn. Allow me to explain. On the day that the twin brothers were born, Esau was born first, and he was one hairy kid. Mom had basically given birth to like a wool sweater. And Dad and Mom were no-nonsense people, so they named him Harry. In Hebrew, Esau, but in English, Harry. And Jacob was born second. He was not okay with winning the silver medal. He was a tad competitive. He came into the world with a death grip on his brother's heel, as if to say to the world, "Not fair, me first." And again, Mom and Dad were no-nonsense people, so they named the little guy Heel Grabber. In Hebrew, Jacob. In English, Heel Grabber. Now, Heel Grabber, it's not the worst name that you could be given, but it's pretty bad. What does the name Heel Grabber mean? Well, what happens when you're running and someone or something catches your foot? What happens when Uruguay is playing against Italy in the World Cup and you get bitten on the shoulder by Luis Suarez? Did you see this? Down you go. And talk about a modern day example of wasted favor. Luis Suarez, he's like one of the top players in the world, and he's pulled this stunt 3 times. This is the picture of what Jacob's name means. It means trickster. It means con man. It means deceiver. This is a guy who will take you down when the referee isn't looking. When you're away on vacation, he takes your job at the office. When he meets your girlfriend and you step away for a moment, he makes a move on her. In the 10-item checkout lane, he has 11 items. He is a deceiver, and he will deceive you. So on the day that Jacob was born, his parents, they noticed this tendency of his to grab for what wasn't his. And so they decided to name him after that tendency, a name which is going to mark him for the rest of his life. Wow, thanks, Dad and Mom. So what you're saying is, who I was at birth determines who I have to be for the rest of my life. I really hope you kept my birth certificate, and I really hope it was written in pencil, because I'd like to make some edits. Thank you very much. So his name means deceiver. Thanks for that one, Dad and Mom. Second, he's not the firstborn son. Now, what's the big deal with firstborn status? This isn't really something we deal with in our culture. So this story takes place long ago in a culture that's different from ours, and long ago in this culture, being the firstborn son was a big deal. And if you're the firstborn son, that means that when Dad dies, you get the lion's share of everything that he owns: the house, the car, the dog, the family timeshare in Maui. You get it all. Here's the crazy thing, though, about this story. Even though Esau and Jacob were twins, born the same day, one was technically the firstborn, and one was not. One was born in favor, and one was born out of favor. One was given the firstborn rights, and the other one, man, it's too late. Sorry, dude. if you're Jacob, what a raw deal. Even from birth, it seems like Jacob knew that this was his lot in life, and this affected his behavior. Would you do something with me? Take your hand and put it into a tight fist and hold it up. Just feel that, tight fist. This is the very first image of Jacob's life, grasping. And as we look at Jacob's choices and his actions throughout his life, throughout his story, this seems to be the defining image. Jacob believes to his core, if I don't look out for myself, nobody else will. I have to do whatever it takes to get ahead. Whatever it takes. Can you smell the conflict coming? Because it's about to come. Turn with me in your Bibles to Genesis 27. Genesis 27. So I'll catch you up on what's happening. So at this point in Jacob's story, his dad was dying. And the custom in the ancient Near East was for the father to give his blessing to the firstborn son before he passed away. And this blessing, it's this symbolic act it's loaded with significance. And so Isaac sends his son Esau, the firstborn son, out to kill an animal so that they can eat that as a part of the blessing ceremony. But Jacob's mom overhears what's going on, and she prods Jacob to take the blessing for himself. And the way he's going to do that is by pretending to be his twin brother Esau. So Jacob kills one of the family goats. Mom makes a stew out of it. She dresses Jacob in Esau's clothes, and this is my favorite part. Dad's old. He can hear just fine, but he can't see so well anymore. And so mom covers Jacob's neck and his hands with the goat skin. So that if dad touches Jacob, he's gonna think that he's touching Esau, also known as hairy, which begs the question, how hairy is hairy? Very hairy, apparently. So now Jacob goes to his blind, ailing father to take the firstborn blessing as his own. So read along with me, Genesis 27, verse 18. He went to his father and said, "My father." "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing." Isaac asked his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" "The Lord your God gave me success," he replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not." Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he proceeded to bless him. Are you really my son Esau?" he asked. "I am," he replied. And then he said, "My son, bring me some of your game to eat so that I may give you my blessing." Jacob brought it to him and he ate, and he brought some wine and he drank. And then his father Isaac said to him, "Come here, my son, and kiss me." So he went to him, and just like Judas, kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of Esau in his clothes, he blessed him. We'll stop there. Oh, it's painful, isn't it? Ugh. Jacob pretends to be someone he's not. He deceives his dad and his brother, and he commits a serious offense against them. Dad eats his stew, and he blesses his son. And Jacob leaves blessed but terrified because here comes Esau. And when dad found out what Jacob had done, he trembled, because this kind of blessing isn't something that you can just take back. What's done is done. In this ancient culture, they take words very seriously. And when a word is spoken, it's binding. Your yes is a yes. Your no is a no. And there's no fine print to say otherwise. And maybe you hear that and think, that sounds very refreshing. I would really like that in our culture. The point is, though, the firstborn blessing, it's Jacob's now, and it can't be undone. So when Esau finds out what Jacob had done, he's furious. And he makes it clear that when their father dies, he's going to kill Jacob, which Jacob takes as a subtle hint that it's time to leave town. So Jacob packs his things, and he heads to his uncle Laban's house. But the tension that we feel right now, that everything that's just happened, that's going to drive the rest of this story. For the rest of Jacob's story, we're going to have questions like, will things ever be set right again between Jacob and Esau? Is he always going to be a deceiver? Can he ever return home? Is God's favor gonna win the day, or is it too late for Jacob? I guess we'll have to see, won't we? So now Jacob's on his way to Uncle Laban's house, and he's hoping to find a new wife and a new life in a new land with a new start. And this next chapter of his life, it might feel like he's getting a do-over, but as his story plays out, we see that Jacob, he's the exact same person. He's just in a different environment. There's some things you can't just walk away from without dealing with it. Those kinds of things, they follow you. Maybe you've heard the phrase, wherever you go, there you are. But sometimes we change our circumstances, hoping that we can change too. Have you ever entered a new part of your life that felt like a do-over, like a clean slate, a fresh start? Maybe it was a new job, or a new relationship, or a new neighborhood. Do you remember what it felt like, that fresh start? Was there any sense of like relief? Especially now, maybe that there's some distance between you and that last chapter of your life? That last relationship, or that office building, or that neighborhood? Does it feel good to have that in the past? I wonder if Jacob felt like this move was an opportunity for a do-over. But I don't know, Jacob's situation, it's pretty extreme. It's not like moving neighborhoods or getting a haircut. Like, he just lied to his dad's face. And his brother is ready to take him out. If you're Jacob, can you really leave the past in the past? There's some things you can't leave behind you without dealing with it. And so this tension, it's gonna continue throughout Jacob's story until he actually deals with the past. And so hopefully you still have your Bibles open. Let's all turn to chapter 32, Genesis 32. And it's painful for me because I love Jacob's entire story. Maybe you have certain characters in the Bible you resonate with. I love his story. But we're going to have to fast forward through some really key moments in his life. So along the way to his uncle Laban's house, Jacob falls asleep for the night in the middle of nowhere. And in the middle of nowhere, God visits him in a dream and says to him, I'm the God of your fathers, and I'm going to give you the land on which you're resting. And I'm with you, and I'm going to watch over you for your entire journey. And I'm going to bring you back to where you are right now. I won't leave you. I promise. How's that for favor? Jeez. So in Jacob's story, this is where things start to shift. And the shift it's really subtle, but Jacob now knows that there's someone who is with him in his journey. And Jacob's got a lot to learn about who this someone is. But what I find so powerful about this moment is that Jacob's on the run. He's not out looking for God. He's not on some spiritual quest or something. He's not out looking for God. But God is looking out for Jacob. And Jacob is going to need God to look out for him because eventually he reaches his uncle Laban's house. Now, if you think that Jacob is a deceiver, a scoundrel, dirty, rotten scoundrel, a liar, cheater, Uncle Laban wrote the book on all of that. Jacob's going to live with Uncle Laban for 20 years. And for 20 years, Uncle Laban is going to give Jacob a taste of his own medicine. You know how Jacob's mom was the brains behind the whole heist of the firstborn blessing? Well, Laban and Rebekah are brother and sister. Apparently, deception runs in the family, like nature or nurture. Well, for Jacob, it's both. And so for 20 years, Laban and Jacob con and out-con each other back and forth and back and forth. It's exhausting. And we think, 20 years? Why didn't Jacob leave? Well, for one thing, where would he go? I mean, he can't go back home. He burnt that bridge to the ground. But there's something else. Jacob meets his dream girl. Oh, hey, girl. This is Laban's daughter, Rachel. And she's a babe. If she was in the army, her rank would be Major Babe. If she was a breakfast cereal, she would be Magically Babelicious. If she was an Abraham, you're gonna have to come to the 6 o'clock service. I just blew that one. I was gonna say, if she was an American president, she'd be Babraham Lincoln. But, see, it's still funny, but we'll try again later. But Jacob, he's Twitter-pated. He's into this girl. And Laban, he sees that puppy dog look in Jacob's eyes. And he says, oh, I can exploit that. And he's going to have Jacob work for years to earn the right to marry Rachel. But the story says that the years flew by for Jacob because she was worth it. Oh, how romantic. If you're sitting next to somebody you love, just tell them, hey, you would have been worth it too. You would have been, absolutely. So after 20 years, Jacob says, babe, I can't live at your parents' house anymore. I'll be honest, your dad is a horrible human being. And so let's get our own apartment. And so Jacob leaves Uncle Laban's house. And he leaves with his 2 wives. 2 wives? Yes, and their sisters. Jacob only planned to marry Rachel, but Laban pulled one over on him. Well, how did he do that? Well, if Jerry Springer and Sister Wives combine plots, that about sums it up. If you're intrigued, you should read it. So Jacob leaves with 2 wives, 1 daughter, and 12 sons. And he leaves with many servants and cattle and donkeys that he's earned from years of hard labor. And honestly, a few cons that he's pulled on Uncle Laban. But Jacob's made quite a life for himself. But even though it's been 20 years, he's still not sure if he can reconcile with his brother. But he wants to, and he's gonna try. So let's turn now to Genesis 32, if I hadn't already told you to do that. Jacob sends messengers to his brother Esau, and he says, I'm coming home. And the messengers return to Jacob and say, message received, your brother is on his way to meet you with 400 men. And Jacob is terrified, as we all would be. 400 men? I'm toast. Game over, Jacob. But Jacob does what he does best. He manipulates. He sends a bunch of gifts with the messengers in waves, hoping that he can pacify any ill will in his brother's heart. And as he gets closer to his home country, Jacob comes to a river crossing, the Jabbok River. That's what it looks like. and he sends his family and all of his belongings across the river. But he stays on the other side, and he spends the night alone. Now, why does he do that? Now, we don't know. We can only speculate. But I think that Jacob knows that this is a threshold moment. Tomorrow morning, once he crosses that river, he's going to meet his brother. And maybe he'll meet his maker. I don't know. But he doesn't know what's going to happen. Like, am I going to be welcomed, or am I going to be murdered? Can I reconcile with my brother, or am I going to have to wander the desert? He doesn't know. And so before he crosses the river, he spends the night alone. At least he thinks he's alone. Chapter 32, verse 23. After he'd sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. And so Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. And then the man said, "Let me go, for it's daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans, and you've overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" And then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It's because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. We'll stop there. So if you're like me, this part of Jacob's story feels very strange, but also significant, all at the same time. Are you getting that too? Strange and significant? Yeah. Not quite sure what to make of all this. But that's the way it is with life-changing moments. We usually don't know how important they were until they're in our rearview mirror. And then we go, "Oh, wow, that was really big, what just happened?" But what's fascinating is that at some point, Jacob realizes this is a significant, life-changing moment, and he can't let it slip away. And so wrestling with Jacob, the stranger in the dark says, "Let me go." But Jacob says, "I won't let you go unless you bless me." Now that's a strange thing to demand of somebody who attacks you in the dark. That's weird, right? Unless, of course, Jacob knows something about who it is that's attacked him. He knows something about this stranger in the dark that we don't know. Why won't Jacob let go of this person? When he was born, Jacob came into the world with a death grip on his brother's heel. And this has been the whole posture of Jacob's life. It's an attitude of the heart that believes, nobody else is looking out for me. I have to look out for myself. And if I want anything, I'm going to have to take it because nobody's going to give it to me. He has hurt the people that he loves. He has lied about who he really is. Why? Because he wants to be blessed. He wants to be favored. But he can't seem to get that. So even if the blessing is stolen or secondhand, we see that Jacob will take whatever he can get. And now, with this stranger in the dark, Jacob won't let go. So now, the stranger in the dark asks Jacob, "What is your name?" Now, for most of us, that's an everyday, ordinary question when we meet somebody new. But not for Jacob. This is a loaded question for Jacob. Think about the last time in Jacob's story when someone asked him who he was. In his father's tent, the question was, "Who are you?" And what was Jacob's answer? "I am Esau. I'm Esau, your firstborn." "Are you really my son Esau?" Yeah, I'm Esau. The stranger's question gets to the heart of the matter, that this is what Jacob's been running from these last 20 years. But there's some things you can't just leave behind you without dealing with them. What is your name? Jacob's found all kinds of ways to run and hide from that question. He's pretended to be his brother because his brother got everything. He's run away from home, and he totally burnt that bridge to the ground. He's become rich and he has a family, but even that felt more like a stolen gift than a blessing. But now Jacob is exposed. He is vulnerable. His hip, I don't know if you caught that, his hip is dislocated, and that would hurt. All that he owns and everyone that he loves is across the river. He can't hide behind any of those other things. It's just Jacob. And the stranger asks him, "What is your name?" You want to know my name? Fine, I'll tell you my name. Heel grabber, imposter, cheater, liar, double crosser, phony, faker. Let's see, scoundrel, deceiver. That's my name, and I hate it. My name has been the theme of my life. And I'm always grasping for blessing, for favor that I want, and I don't have it. I'm stuck. I can't change. Everywhere I go, there's Jacob. But here's the thing, stranger in the dark. Somewhere in the middle of this wrestling match, I figured out who you are. And I'm not gonna let go of you until you bless me, because it's your blessing that I've been needing all this time. You wanna know my name? My name is Jacob, and I'm not letting go of you. Finally, Jacob is being honest about who he is. And so the stranger says, "That's not your name anymore. Your name will no longer be deceiver. That was your old name. That was your old identity. That was your old way of seeing yourself and relating in the world. Not anymore. Your new name will be Yisrael, because you have struggled. You have struggled with God and with humans, and you've overcome." Yisra means to struggle. It means to contend. It means to wrestle. And El means God. Put them together, Yisrael, he who wrestles with God. That's your name now. And Jacob, he named that place of blessing Peniel. Peni means face. And El means, do you remember? God. Put them together, the face of God, God's face. Whose face? Wrestles with who? Who was the stranger in the dark? The one who allows us, invites us to wrestle with him. The only one who can rename us and change our identity after years of heartache and regret. From that struggle comes the blessing that we need to hear the most. Our true identity, our new identity. Not an identity based on who we've been. Not an identity based on how we were raised or what people have said about us, but it's an identity based on who God is and who we could become in him. If we want that, we have to wrestle with God. Would you be willing to wrestle with God if it meant that he'd make you a new person? I have to warn you, though, for the rest of Jacob's story, he walks with a limp. He leans on a walking staff. After all, and could we really wrestle with God and not experience some side effects? But here's the thing. The hip injury wasn't an accident. Read the story. God intentionally dislocated Jacob's hip. Why would he do that? He's already been through enough. Cut the guy some slack, you know? But as you look at Jacob's story, as you look at it, yeah, his hip is dislocated. But do you have a sense that there's like deeper dislocation in Jacob's life? Dislocation that he's been walking with these last 20 years? Dislocation with dad and with mom, with Esau, with Laban, with his own identity, with God. This is going to sound really weird, but God hurts Jacob so that he can heal him. He hurts him so he can heal him. God has to use drastic measures to heal Jacob. God has to dislocate Jacob's hip. Because if God dislocates his hip, that will relocate his hands. And over time, that's going to realign his heart. For the rest of Jacob's life, he can't grasp. He has to lean. He has to rely on something else besides himself. He has to trust in someone else. Jacob, this is gonna hurt. But I have to put you in a place of helplessness. It's the only way that you're gonna be able to experience my power. It's the only way you're gonna be able to experience my blessing and my favor in your life. If your hip is out of place, you can't grasp. You have to lean. You're gonna have to trust me. You're gonna have to live a life where you rely on me. I didn't create you to live independently of me. I'm the source of the favor and the identity and the life that you crave. And if you go looking for that in anyone else or anything else, you're gonna choke the life out of those people. You're gonna choke the life out of those experiences, and you won't know what's wrong. And then you move on to the next relationship and the next neighborhood and the next experience. It's not that those other people or things aren't good, but if they become the center of your identity, that center can't hold. It will fail you again and again. But if I dislocate your hip, as much as that hurts, you're gonna be in a place where you're finally able to experience the love and the approval and the intimacy and the favor that you've been craving your entire life. Jacob's story is about a man who experiences redemption. And it's not through his own scheming. He experiences it through wounding. How common is Jacob's story in this room? How many of us never really knew God's favor until we struggled with him? How many of us never really knew God's favor until we were wounded in some way? Until we experienced tragedy? Suddenly we're all alone and everything's on the other side of the river. But a stranger in the dark wrestles with us until daybreak. And all of our self-reliance is shattered, but we've come face to face with the God who saves us from ourselves. 2 Timothy 1 says, God has saved us, not because of anything we've done, but because of his mercy, his own purpose, his own favor. Romans 5 says, at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. Titus 3 says, when the favor and love of God our Savior appeared, he saved us, not because of the righteous things that we've done, but because of his mercy. Not because of anything that we've done, when we were still powerless, and because of his mercy. Jesus meets us and he redeems us in all of the ways that we have it together and in all of the ways that we don't. In all the times that we're good and we're loving and we're right on. And in all the times that we just fall flat on our face and we're embarrassed. Jesus says, it's only when you lose your life that you really find it. The limp, it's a gift from God. It's a sign of his favor. It's a reminder for the rest of our days. God met with me. He wrestled with me. He dislocated my hips so that he could heal my dislocated life. He gave me a new name, and that new name reminds me he's changing me. I don't have to be who I used to be. Instead, I can walk with a limp towards this new future that God has for me. So take a moment to pause. Lots of things have been said today. But ask yourself, what has God been saying to me specifically? Is there anything that I'm running from that I actually need to deal with? Is there family dysfunction? Are there messages that have been playing in my head about who I am or who I'm not that aren't true, that need to go? Things that I regret, things that I've said or done or didn't say or didn't do that I should have. Any ways that I'm living a self-reliant life instead of a God-dependent one. We're going to take some time to pray and reflect and sing. And God's here in this space, and he'd be willing to wrestle with you. And if it would help to have somebody praying with you through that, there'll be folks here at the front who'd love to do that. But don't rush out. We've set aside this time so that we can respond to what God's saying. Wrestle with him. He's here in this space, and on the other side of that wrestling, he has a new name for you. Don't let go of him until he's given you a new name. Can I bless you before we sing and pray? Why don't you open your hands with me one last time. The Lord blesses you, and he shows you his favor. He watches over you. He smiles on you. He's crazy about you. May you see that you don't have to run from the past. With God's help, you can deal with it. He'll wrestle through it with you. And on the other side of it, he has a new name for you. And right now it might be painful, but on the other side is restoration. Right now it might feel like a death, but on the other side of it's resurrection. May you see that just like Jacob, you don't have to live like this, not one more day. Instead, may you live like this. The Lord bless you.